This video will show you how to automate Google Sheets with Python, specifically how to connect to a workbook, how to create and open existing sheets, how to modify the cells, how to add formulas, how to do formatting, and we'll go through a lot of different nuances and some ways to more efficiently perform these operations. At the end of the video, I'll even walk you through a mini project that will illustrate how to take an array of different values, add those into a sheet, add some headings, create some formulas, etc. With that said, let's get into it after a quick word from our sponsor, NordPass. NordPass provides the ultimate password and credential management solution. In today's digital age, we've got all kinds of passwords, keys, credit cards, and credentials, and I don't know about you, but I always have trouble finding them and actually sharing them with other people. Now, to combat this, NordPass not only stores all of this information securely, but it lets you autofill it across multiple devices and share it with colleagues or employees with advanced access controls. Now, what that means is that you can actually use strong passwords by default and easily grant or revoke access. Not to mention that if there are any security vulnerabilities, NordPass's data breach scanner can automatically detect those and inform you of them immediately. Now, if you don't believe me, you can try a 3-month free trial of NordPass using my activation code TechWithTim at the link nordpass.com/techwithtim. Now, password management is an absolute nightmare when it's not taken seriously, and that leads to stats like this, where 52% of development teams have actually missed deadlines due to issues accessing infrastructure. Get your business secured today with a 3-month free trial of NordPass so that you're not a part of that statistic. You can go and use my activation code TechWithTim at the link nordpass.com/techwithtim for this limited time offer. Let's begin automating Google Sheets. Now, in order to do this, we're going to need to go to the Google Cloud Console. So to do that, we're going to just search Google Cloud Console and we're going to find the URL that is console.cloud.google.com. Once you click into this here, we're going to create a new project. Now, before we do that, just make sure you select the correct Google account in the top right-hand corner where you want this project to be created. Let me go ahead and do that. All right, so once you've selected your primary Google account, you can go up here where it shows the project list and you can simply create a new project. You can see I have a bunch of them here. In this case, we can just call this something like tutorial sheets. Doesn't really matter. Call it whatever you'd like. You can select an organization if you know what that is. If not, just go ahead and click create. From here, it's going to create the new project for you. Once it's created, we're going to select that project from the project selector, and then I'll show you the next step. So here, select project. Okay, we're now inside of this project. Now we're going to open up the navigational menu here, and we're going to go to APIs and services. From this menu, we're going to click on enabled APIs and services. There's many ways to get to this, but you just want to get to enabled APIs and services. From here, we're going to click on this button that says enable APIs and services, and we're going to search for the Google Sheets API. By the way, if you're ever trying to do any automation with Google, pretty much all of the APIs are available here. So we're going to search for the Google Sheets API. You can see it will pop up right here. Click into it, and then we go ahead and click enable. That's pretty much it. We're just enabling the Google Sheets API. Now what we'll need to do is create a set of credentials that will utilize the API that then we can have access to in our project. So once you've enabled the API, you should be brought to a page that looks like this. Now, for some reason you can't find this page, you can always just go back to the enabled APIs and services. You can go back here. You can search for Google Sheets API again, click into it, and then simply click on manage, and it should bring you back to this page. Regardless, you can press this button right here, which says create credentials, or you can select the credentials menu down here and then create credentials. There's a bunch of different ways to do this. So we're going to click on this big blue button here for creating the credentials. Now it's going to ask us what type of API we're using. We're going to select the Google Sheets API, and where we have user data or application data, we can simply select application data. That'll bring us to next, and this is where we're going to create a service account. So what we need is a service account. So what we'll do is give this a name. I'm just going to call this Python API like that, and it's going to go ahead and give us a service account ID. We're now going to go ahead and click on create and continue, and we're going to grant this a role. Now this step is very important. Make sure that you give this the editor role. So you're going to search for editor, select editor here. The ID doesn't matter, it can be whatever you want, but you just want to make sure you have this as an editor. You're then going to click on continue, and from here you can go ahead and click on done. All we're doing is creating a set of credentials that we'll be able to use, from our Python script that will be able to edit things like spreadsheets. Great. Now from this point on, what we need to do is actually download the credentials. So we're going to go to the credentials tab here. We're going to click on the service account that we just created, and it's going to open it up for us. Now here you can actually modify the account if you want, but what we want to do is go to keys. From keys, we're going to click on add key, and we're going to create a new key. Now we're going to just download a JSON version of this key, which will be able to load in our Python script. So go ahead and select JSON and click on create. It's going to download that most likely into your downloads folder. And what we need to do now is get this in the same project as our Python file. All right, so I've just opened up Visual Studio Code, and you can see that I have my Finder open here. If you're on Windows, obviously this will be Windows Explorer. Now what you're going to want to do is find the file that was downloaded, so whatever location it went to, and just take it and put it in the same project where your Python file is going to be. So just to backtrack a little bit, what I did in VS Code here is I just opened up a new folder. It's called Google Sheets Tutorial. Okay, so just go File, Open Folder, open any new folder. It can be on your desktop, wherever you want it to be. I created a Python file called main.py, and now my goal is to get the file I just downloaded, so this one here, into the same directory. Now to do that, I can simply take it and drag it over here in VS Code. I also could simply copy it and then locate the folder on my desktop and then paste it in. I assume many of you are able to do that. Just get it in the same directory as your Python file. Now it's going to have some information here. Obviously you don't want to leak this. I will clearly delete the project after this tutorial. You don't need to know what any of that means. What we're going to do next, just to make our life a little bit easier, is we're going to look at this file. Let's zoom in a little bit here. We're going to rename it. So I'm just going to call this credentials, like that, so that it's a little bit easier for us to reference in our Python code. All right, so now that we have our credentials in the same folder as our Python file, the next thing we'll need to do is actually link the Google Sheet that we want to work with the service account that we created. And you can do this with as many Google Sheets as you'd like, but obviously you need to have ownership of them. So what I'm going to do is transition over here, and you can see that I have a Google Sheet that I've created. It's just an empty sheet. I simply put one test value here in the first kind of column, first row. What we'll do now is we'll find the email address of the associated service account, and we'll simply share access of this Google Sheet to the email address. So if we go back here to our Google Cloud Console, you'll see that we have our keys and we have our service account. So I'm already in the service account, but again, if for some reason you can't find it, what you're going to be doing is going into the Google Sheets API, and you should see a service account here, and it should actually specify the email for the service account. So what we're going to do is copy that email. You can also click into it here, and it will show you the email for the service account that you created. So we're going to get that email. We're going to go to our Google Sheet. We're going to click on Share, and we're going to paste that email inside of here. Now we're going to make sure that we have editor selected as the access, and we're simply going to share this Google Sheet with the email associated with our service account. Now you can do this with any number of Google Sheets that you'd like. As soon as you do that, anyone who has access to the service account, which in this case is us and our Python script, will be able to modify and access this Google Sheet. So there you go again, take the email, share it from the Google Sheet. Now you're good. We can go back to VS Code and we can start working on connecting to this Google Sheet. So now that we've created and shared the Google Sheet, what we need to do is install a few packages that we need to actually interact with this. Now to install these packages, we can do it just in our main system or our main Python installation, or we can create a virtual environment, which will make things a little bit neater. Now the virtual environment will be a bit different depending on your operating system, but if you're on Mac, you can type Python, if we could spell this correctly, Python 3 -m, then v, and then the name of the environment you want to install this in, which can be something like Sheets. You can name it anything you'd like. If you're on Windows, you're simply just going to have Python. If you're on Linux, it'll be Python 3. So we're going to hit enter here, and it should go ahead and create the virtual environment for us. Now that we have the virtual environment created, we need to activate this. Now there's a few ways to activate it. If you're on Mac or Linux, you can type the following command. Now this is going to be source, the environment name, which in this case is Sheets, and then bin, and then activate. Now when you type that, you should see that you get a prefix here with the name of your environment, and now in this terminal, we have access to the virtual environment. Now if you are on Windows, the command's going to be a little bit different. What you're going to want to do is make sure you're inside of PowerShell, and you're going to type /sheets/bin/activate. So same thing here, okay? but you're just having the // and this should run this file as an executable and initialize the environment for you. Okay, so now that the virtual environment is initialized, what we can do is install the different modules that we need. So we're going to type pip3 install, and then the first one we need is the Google API Python client, and I will leave these in the description in case you just want to copy them. Now, as well as that, we also want to have the Google, and then this is the auth-http lib2, and then we want the Google auth and this is the oauth-lib, and then lastly we want gspread. Okay, so these are the 4 libraries that we need: Google API Python client, Google auth http lib2, Google auth-oauthlib, and gspread. Again, I will link this exact command in the description so you can simply copy it and paste it. We're going to go ahead and hit enter and install all of these different libraries. If you are on Windows, you might note here that you can actually just use pip instead of pip3. Okay, so if pip3 doesn't work, just do pip, and that command hopefully should work for you. Okay, so now everything should be installed in our virtual environment, and the virtual environment is activated. I'm going to clear the screen, minimize the terminal, and we'll start typing now and actually getting access to our sheet. So we're going to begin by importing something called gspread, and let me just zoom in a little bit here so you can read this. Now, gspread is a library that makes it easy for us to actually interact with the sheet. This is kind of a high-level API on top of the lower-level operations you can perform on the Google Sheet. So that's what gspread is. Next, we're going to say from google.o, if we could spell this too, oauth2, .service_account. We're going to import the credentials. In case you need any of this code, I will link it in a GitHub repo in the description. And what we're going to do next is we're going to specify some scopes. Now, scopes are the different things that you can do, kind of the operations or the access you have when you're accessing a specific file, document, etc., using the Google APIs. Now, in our case, we just want access to a spreadsheet. So we're going to say scopes is equal to a new list. And inside of here, we're going to write out the following scope. I'm actually just going to copy it in so I don't get any typos. Again, this will be linked in the description. So this is the googleapis.com/auth/spreadsheets. Now what we're going to do is create a new set of credentials using the JSON credentials file we have here in our directory. So we're going to say creds is equal to credentials.from_service account file. Okay, and then we're going to type the name of the file, which is credentials.json, matching up exactly with what we have here. Now, when we do that, let me just remove this here. We are now going to specify that scopes is equal to the scopes that we have here, saying, okay, we want to use this service account, and these are the scopes we want with the service account for what we're accessing. Now that we have that, we're going to authorize ourselves. So we're going to say client is equal to gspread. We got to spell that correctly, .authorize, and we're going to authorize the credentials that we just created. That's going to give us a client now that will be able to access different Google Sheets. All right, so now what we're going to need is access to the ID of the Google Sheet that we want to access. So we're going to say sheet_ID is equal to an empty string. And we are now going to go back to Google Sheets. So let me open up this file right here, and we can find the ID. Now, the way you find the ID of the sheet is you simply copy the URL here. You look for where the /d is. I'll zoom in so it's a little bit easier to see. And then we will highlight everything that comes after the /d, but before the edit, okay? So after the /d, this is the ID of this document. So you're just gonna copy that there from the URL, and we're gonna go back, and we're gonna paste this in our sheet ID. Now that we have the sheet ID, we can use this to actually open the spreadsheet. To do that, we can say sheet is equal to client.open by, and this is actually not URL, sorry, this is open by key. And then we can simply pass in here the variable sheet ID. Now I will note there's a few other ways to open this. You can open by URL, open all, you can open by a name, you can open by the key, which is what we're doing. The key is going to be the most foolproof because you're just using the ID. So for example, if the name of the spreadsheet changed, you're not going to have an error here, right? Because you're using the actual ID. So what we can do just to make sure this is working is we can say values_list is equal to, this is going to be the sheet, and then .sheet1 .row_values, and then we can simply pass in 1 here. Now you might not know exactly what this is doing, but I'm just going to print the values list. And if we go back to our sheet here, you'll see that we have a test value in the first cell. So what should happen when I run my code is it should simply print out that test value. So let me just clear the terminal here. Notice what I did, right, is I have my sheet. I'm accessing the worksheet within this Google Sheet or this Google workbook. The sheet is called Sheet 1, okay? And then I'm getting all of the row values in row 1 and I'm printing those out. So now if I go here and I type python3 main.py, that's how I'm able to run this file. You should see that we get some warning. That's fine. Don't worry about that. And it should print out the test value for us. And it does. It says test value inside of a list, telling us that this is indeed working. So just to prove to you that this is really working, we can go add another value here. So we can say value 2. We can save this sheet. Notice that it's been saved now to the drive. And if we go back and we rerun this, we can wait a second and we should now see that we get 2 values appearing here, and we get test value and value 2. So we have successfully connected to our workbook or to our Google Sheet. Now I want to show you a bunch of different operations that we can perform on it. All right, so I've just opened a piece of documentation here that's going to be very useful to you and is exactly how I learned how to do this. Now this is just the official documentation for gspread, which is the module that we're using, and it pretty much shows you everything you'd want to do from creating, sharing, selecting worksheets, formatting, changing colors, etc. So obviously I'll walk through some of these operations with you in the video, but if you want something specific that I didn't cover, you can go to this link, which will be in the description. For example, we can see how to select a worksheet. So we can see that we have the ability to get a worksheet by its index. So just to be clear here, the worksheets are what are down here, right? So we have only one worksheet, but we could create another one like sheet 2, and now this would be index 1, whereas this one would be index 0. So that's what it means by kind of selecting the worksheets. You can also select one by its name, and you can just reference the name like this, so sh.sheet1 if it's called sheet 1. You also can get a list of all of the worksheets. You can create a new worksheet by adding a worksheet with a title and the number of rows and columns. You can delete a worksheet. You can update the name and the color, etc. So what I'll show you now is just how we update cells. So a few kind of basic operations here. So let me go back to VS Code, and then we'll just work on a mini project that will kind of bring all of this full circle. So first, let's list out all of the worksheets that we have. Let's then select one, and then we can just add some cell values and kind of read in what we have. So let's go like this and say that this is actually going to be our workbook, just so that it's clear. And we're going to say sheets is equal to the workbook dot, and we can just say, what is this, worksheets, like that. Then we can simply print all of the sheets, and if we go here and we run our code, we can't ignore the warning, doesn't really matter for right now. You see that we get worksheet sheet 1 and then worksheet sheet 2. They both have an ID and they also have a title. Now let's say we want to get all of the titles, so we don't want these worksheet objects. What we can do is the following. We can actually put a map around this. So we can say map, and then we can put a function like lambda. We could say lambda x.title. This just means we're going to apply this function to every single value inside of this list. And then what I can do is I can just print out the list version of my sheets. And you will see that if I run this here, let's make it a little bit bigger, it should give us the titles, which it does, of sheet 1 and sheet 2. So that's how you see the different titles. Now that you have the titles, you can select a specific sheet. So we know what the titles are. So we can say sheet is equal to our workbook dot and then worksheet. And then we can simply use one of the titles to select one. So we can select sheet 1. And then what we can do is something like sheet dot, and maybe we want to update a cell. So I'm going to say update, and then notice we have a few options here, right? We have index, note, tab, title, etc. Maybe we want to update the title of this. So let's update the title to be Hello World. Okay, let's go ahead and run our code and give it a second here. And we should see now, if we go back here, that the title of sheet 1 is Hello World. Okay, so that's how you update a sheet. Now, once you're inside of a sheet, so now we're actually going to select the sheet that has the title Hello World because we've changed the title, right? If you want to update a cell in there, you have two options. You can use the update _ a cell. Now, when you use a cell, this is going to take a notation like in all capitals, sorry, A1 or B2 or B3 or something like that, right? Where you have a character or you have a letter and then you have the corresponding column, I guess, or no, sorry, row. Whereas if you use cell, you're able to actually reference the row and the column that you want to access using numeric values, which is a little bit easier when you're working in Python. So in this case, I can access 1, 1, which would be the very first cell, right? I can access 2, 1. So if we go and do 1, 1, we can say something like, hello world, this is changed. And now if we clear and run our code, you'll see in a second, once this finishes, that we will update a value in the cell. So if we go back here, you can see now that we've updated that very first cell and it says, hello world, this is changed. Okay, so again, you have those two options. You have the option to update a cell, where now you're only gonna pass one thing. So you can pass, say, A1, or you can do cell, where you're gonna pass the row and the column that you wanna update. Now, let's say rather than updating a cell, you just want to actually get the value of a specific cell. Well, in that case, we can say value is equal to, and then it's going to be our sheet dot, and in this case, we can type just cell or a cell. Okay, so same thing before, and we can do something like A1 dot value, and then if I print out the value here, so again, let's go clear and run. You should see that we get the value, which in this case is hello world, this is changed. Okay, so again, you have access to a cell or simply cell, and then you're going to use dot value, and it's going to tell you the value that's inside of that cell. Now, it's possible that you may not actually know the location of the cell that you want, and instead, maybe you know that it has a specific value. So maybe the value is something like Tim is great. So you know there's some cell on the page and it has some string value, right? But you don't know where it is, and you may want that location because some other information may be relative to that location. So in this case, what we can actually do is we can find a cell by its text. So what I can do is I can say cell is equal to sheet dot find. Let me just remove all of this here. And we can put in here whatever the information is that we want to find. So in this case, it was Tim is great. And then what I can do is I can print out some properties of this cell. So I can say cell.row and cell.column. And now if it finds the cell that we're looking for that contains this value, we can get some information about it, right? Like the row and the column. So if we go here again and we clear and we run, you should see that we get that information and we get 1, 3, okay? So it located that cell and it told us, well, it's in row 1 and it's in column 3. So now we can use that information to maybe access or update another cell. Last thing that I'll show you here is that we can actually perform some formatting, and then we'll get into just a tiny little project that will kind of illustrate more about how to do this and work with Google Sheets. So let's say we want to actually just format the very first cell and we want to make it something like bold text. Well, to do that, we can simply write the name of our worksheet, so something like sheet dot format. Then in our letter number notation, so something like A1, we're going to specify the cell, or you can actually specify a range of cells. So I could do something like A1 to B1. That would then modify 2 cells. In this case, we'll just do A1. And we're going to specify the text format, if we could spell this correctly, to be equal to, and then this is going to be bold, true. You can imagine there are a lot of other formatting things you can do. This is probably just the most simple one. And now if I go and I run my code, we'll see in a second, once this finishes executing, that if I go over here, we now have bold text in cell A1. I should probably zoom in a little bit so it's easier to read. But you guys get the point, okay? That's how you perform the formatting. There is like a million other things you can do with the formatting. And I'm actually just gonna quickly open up a link that's gonna be a little bit helpful if you wanna do some more advanced formatting. So I'm gonna leave this in the description, but there is actually a module called gspread formatting, which lets you do some much easier formatting using Python. In this case, you can see we can actually create like a more advanced formatting with horizontal alignment, text format, background color, etc. And there's all these cool things that you can do. I'll let you guys reference that if you want from the description. So if you're going to do a ton of formatting, definitely check this out. Otherwise, what I'm doing here is totally fine. Okay, so now we know how to format, access cells, update worksheets, modify worksheets, etc. What we're going to do now is get into a tiny little project. So let's do that. All right, so for this project, I have some values. Now, all I want to do is just put these values inside of a new worksheet, but I only want to put them in that worksheet if the worksheet doesn't already exist. If it does exist, then what I want to do is override the values. If it doesn't exist, I need to create that new worksheet and then add all of these different values. I also want to perform a little bit of formatting, and I want to use some equations or formulas in my sheet, which I'm going to show you how to do. So we have these values, okay? And what we're going to do now is start by actually creating a new worksheet if the one that we want doesn't already exist. So first thing we need to do here is just get the name of all of the sheets that exist so we can see if this already exists or not. So to do that, we're going to say the worksheet list is equal to, we're going to use the same thing I showed you before where we have map lambda x, x.title, and then this is going to be the sheet.worksheets. And what did we call it? We actually called this the workbook, sorry. So it's going to be workbook.worksheet. That's going to give us the names of all of the different worksheets that we have inside of our file. Now that we have that, we're going to specify what the name of the worksheet we want to create is. So we're going to say new worksheet name is equal to, and I'm just going to call this values. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is check if this exists inside of this. So I'm going to say if the new worksheet name is inside the worksheet list, then what I want to do here is simply access that sheet. So I'm going to say my sheet is equal to the workbook dot the worksheet, and then we're going to have the new worksheet name. So this is if it already exists. Otherwise, we want to create it. So to do that, we're going to say sheet dot add, sorry, not sheet. We're going to say workbook dot add worksheet. We're going to give it a name. Well, the name is going to be the new worksheet name. And then we need to specify the number of rows and the number of columns that we want when we create this new sheet. So we're saying 10 rows, 10 columns. This is the name of the sheet. We're going to add this to our workbook. So now next time when we run this, it will already exist. So rather than adding it, we'll simply access it. And that also reminds me, we're going to associate this with the sheet variable. So this way now, no matter what happens, whether it existed or didn't exist, we're going to have some sheet that we can start working on. Hopefully that's clear, but that just checks, okay, does it exist? If it does, access it, otherwise create it. All right, now that we have it, we're going to clear it. So I'm going to say sheet.clear. That's just going to remove everything inside of it. So we're starting fresh, and now we can start writing in some new values. Obviously, you don't have to do that, but that's what I'm going to show you how to do here. Now, the long way to actually take all of these values and to put them into our Google Sheet would be to write something like this. Now, what this does is simply loop through all of the different values that we have inside of the values list. It then loops through every single one of the columns that we have in those rows and individually updates every single cell inside of our sheet to contain this value. Now that's fine, but the issue is that these are happening kind of sequentially, and we can't start updating the next cell until we've updated the previous cell. Now what this means is this code, even when we only have something like 12 values here to actually update, is going to take a few seconds to run, and it's really inefficient to update one cell at a time unless you need to be doing individual cells. So what we can do instead is we can actually update a range of cells at the same time. So to do that, we can use our sheet name. We can say sheet, and we can say dot update. So rather than update cell, we can actually update a range of them. Now to do that, we can put an F string here, and we can say we're going to update from A1 to C, and then this is going to be the length of our values. Now the reason I'm doing this is because, well, if we have 4 rows, then we want to go to C4. What I'm specifying is the box essentially, and we can go back here and look at it, right? So the box is something like this that I want to update with different values. So C4 is what I want to go to because we have 4 rows. If we had 5, 6, 7 rows, we'd go down there, right? In this case, I'm hard coding C because I know we're just going to have 3 columns. Okay, so I'm saying A1 to C and then that dynamic value. And then what we're going to do is specify the values we want to update this with, which will just be values. Okay, so we have the array here of values. What this does is take all of these and correspondingly place it inside of the box that we specified here. Okay, before we go any further, I want to test to make sure this is working. So I'm going to clear this and I'm going to rerun, and it should now make that new sheet for us and add those values inside of it. And we got an issue here. It says the order of arguments. Okay, that's fine. Deprecation warning. Don't worry about that. Anyways, if we go here, we now see that we have a new sheet called values. Okay, it's a little bit smaller because we only added 10 rows and 10 columns. And we now have our name, price, quantity. We have the name of the items, the price, and the quantity. Now, if we want to do something like make some of these titles bold, or maybe we want to add the total price or the total quantity, we can do that. And I'm going to show you how we do that now. Okay, So we have sheet.update. Now what we're going to want to do after this is we're going to want to perform a little bit of formatting. So we have some bold titles, right? So what I can do is say sheet.format, and I want to format a range of cells. So in this case, I can format from A1 to C1, which are going to be my headers. And I can simply say that I want this to be the text format of bold true, and that should give me some bold headers. So let's see if that works or not. We're going to, again, run our code. We'll go over here and we should see in real time that it actually updates them to be bold. So you can see it clears it, adds it back, and then makes our headers bold. Very nice. Okay, so that automation is working. Last thing we'll do, sorry to keep going back and forth, is we'll make it so that these cells down here that I'm selecting have the sum of the price and the sum of the quantity. So in order to do that, we can update some individual cells. So I can say sheet.update cell. Let me just make this a bit smaller so it's easier to read. In terms of updating cell, we can pick the cell that we want to update. So the cell that I want to update is going to be the len of values plus 1, because I want to get however many rows I have. In this case, it's 4 plus 1. So the 5th row, right? That's the one that I'm updating. And then in terms of the column, I want to do the second column. And we're going to make this equal to an equation. Now to do that, I just do equals sum, and then I can say B2 to B4. So that means, okay, hey, let's go back to the sheet quickly and have a look. From B2, which is this, to B4, I want to take the sum of that and store that in B5. That's all I'm doing, okay? And I'm just doing it a bit dynamically by using the length of values. So if we added more values, this would adjust. Now let's do the same thing here, except this time we're going to go to column 3, and we're going to do C2 and C4. And now let's run the code. Let's go over here and let's watch the update get performed. So we should see it clears, adds the values back in, and then notice now that we have the sums, okay? So we have the sum of all the prices, which is 77.97, and then we have the sum of the quantity, which is 8. Perfect. There we go. I think that's pretty much everything I needed to show you. So that is automating Google Sheets with Python. Obviously, there is a ton more stuff you can do. I just wanted to make this video to give you a primer, show you the setup, show you how you connect to an individual sheet, and then give you a bit of realistic information on kind of how to set up a mini project. If you guys have any questions, do let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.